General Understanding is brought to you by Dominion Energy's Talent Acquisition Team and Veterans Resource Group. We're proud to share our military podcast with you. We invite you to visit dominionenergy.com/military to learn more about our military programs and Dominion Energy careers to find the career you love.
Welcome to General Understanding, a podcast for Dominion Energy employees, where we speak with individuals who support our military and veteran communities, and where we will recognize veteran and other military-connected employees who are helping to transform the way we do business. This episode features Jason Meidinger, a Dominion Energy veteran employee. Jason is a director of generation projects working on offshore wind and a Marine Corps veteran. Topics discussed in this episode include military experiences influencing professional development, the value of military leadership, and applying and sharing military leadership traits at Dominion Energy. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
I'll hold your hands and you hold mine. Connect and walk ourselves up to the top. Support and power develop till we can rise above exploitation and pain.
Welcome to General Understanding, a conversation for betterment for all employees to learn more about veterans, a platform for unity, embracing communities, perfect opportunity to value you and me, those who serve their country and fought for our rights, to the family and friends of those who sacrifice. This is dedicated to all, and by the way, I salute our armed forces every day as your holiday.
Connect and walk ourselves up to the top. Support and power develop till we can rise above exploitation and pain.
I'm your host, Matt Kellum, Military and Recruitment Program Coordinator for Dominion Energy. Today's guest that we have with us is Jason Meidinger, Director of Generation Projects, focused on offshore wind, which is certainly a very popular thing for the company these days. Welcome, Jason. How you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. Very excited.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to join. When we were thinking about all the different guests that we want to have on, obviously one of the things that we want to consider is veteran employees. So you're actually the first veteran employee that we've had on to the podcast. So that's exciting for me.
You send the bar very low today, then.
No, man, I think we're actually going to set it pretty high. So you're definitely going to set a good bar for others. And I'm also excited too. Of course, there's a lot of really good stuff going on with renewable energy, as we all know, with the company and especially offshore wind. So I know you have some exciting perspectives to share, but also want to, certainly tap into your experiences as it pertains to leadership, because I think that's something that will be a really interesting topic for the listeners to hear about. So with that, if you don't mind, maybe introduce yourself a little bit better to the listeners and tell us about your Dominion Energy and military background.
Sure. So I guess I could start at the beginning, which is, I grew up in Minnesota, the land of, don't you know, yeah, that kind of, just south of Canada.
Right.
Grew up in a small town. Basically, my first few jobs was working on farms and working in the grocery store, simple stuff like that. And I wasn't very passionate about school, so I didn't apply myself. I was kind of rudderless, didn't really want to know what I do with my life. And when I graduated from high school, I just knew I didn't want to be in Minnesota.
Right.
So I met the Marine Corps recruiters. I mean, they got me right away. It was this adventure. I couldn't sign up fast enough, and I was gone within a month of graduating.
Wow.
And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I went to boot camp, and I just assimilated with the culture. It was perfect. The discipline, the activity level of Marines, and mental fortitude, just everything about it, I fit like a glove. And I was very successful, which was weird because since I really didn't apply myself at school, I didn't understand how being successful could impact my life.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so, it was while going through boot camp and watching these people trying to lead a bunch of kids. I was like, these squad leaders, like, why can't I do that? I mean, I could probably do a better job than this guy. And so this opportunity came along with the squad leader was fired, and he's doing 1,000 push-ups, and who wants to take his place? And I just stuck my hand up in the air, and he threw the vest at me and said, "Get in front." And from that point on, it really kind of changed my life. I mean, I was responsible for others. I was very successful at leading others, I guess would be the best way. And I think part of that is just maybe what's the right way to put it? Maybe empathy. I mean, understanding where people come from, trying to get them to understand why something's being done, and trying to develop them. And I'm talking very generic here, but it started there at boot camp, and it went all the way through my career. I mean, I was a leader everywhere I went in the military, from squad leader school to school of infantry. I was always some sort of either the squad leader or the guide. If anybody knows what that is from the Marine Corps, it's the leader of the platoon and stuff like that. And then when I got into the real fleet, which was the infantry, I got promoted very quickly. Enjoyed the leadership role. I think the part that I enjoyed the most was watching this diverse group of characters that were coming up through the ranks with me.
That's a nice way of putting it. Character.
Yeah. Well, it's a diverse world, because you have all these people coming from all over the country that are getting thrown into this mixing bowl, and then they're giving these leadership opportunities to lead other Marines, is the best way to put it, from a private, PFC, Lance Corporal, et cetera. They're given responsibilities and accountability to grow them and their team as they went through their life in the military. And I just gravitated toward that. I enjoyed it. I liked a lot of the leaders I had. I was very fortunate. I had kind of like a storybook career in my 7.5 years that I was in. I spent a lot of time in foreign countries. I traveled throughout the world. I was very successful at what I did in the sense of either from the infantry. I also was very lucky in the fact that I was very good marksman in the military, and it was recognized. And so I ended up going to the Marine Corps shooting team for a couple of years.
Nice.
Competed at the international level all over the world. And I was part of a team. It wasn't just me doing this, but it was a group. It was a Marine Corps shooting team, and we taught not just ourselves, but civilians and other Marines throughout the world. We go to Okinawa and to teach the Marines how to do that. We'd have competitions throughout with the other armed forces, the Air Force, Navy, et cetera. It was just kind of, like I said, this really fun adventure I did for a couple of years. Before I realized, I wanted to go back, because I'm kind of like this knowledge learner. I enjoyed learning new things, but I wanted to get out and go get my engineering degree. Before I re-enlisted a second time, I was like, this is a good time. I'm either committed to do my life in the Marine Corps, or I can get out now and go to school and get a degree. And that's what I chose to do. Gosh, it's been 21 years now since showing my age, but
it's been 20 for me as well. So yeah, it's tough.
Time flies. So it was, but part of that was just, the Marine Corps investing in me and showing me my own potential, and giving me my self-worth, showing me the discipline, giving me good work ethic. And then I took that to school, and I treated my bachelor's degree like a job. Like it was just an extension of the military.
Sure.
And I ended up doing engineering in like 3.5 years. I did it really fast because I was just focused on getting it done. And while that was going on, Dominion was offering a scholarship for veterans at the time. And so I put in my application. I was very fortunate, very lucky, and got it. And part of that was getting a co-op during my summers. So while I was going to school during the regular semesters, during the summer, I went and worked for at the time, Fossil and Hydro Group. Full circle.
And so what years was this again?
This was back in 2000 to 2003 when I was in college.
Yeah.
And I worked at the Chesterfield Power Station and Mount Storm Power Station, just it was a co-op, as an intern, basically.
Right.
But then as soon as I graduated, they sent me to Chesterfield Power Station as a power engineer. And I worked in the technical services group and did that for a couple of years. But I saw this other work coming from other parts of the company. So I, expanded, and I went on to the electric transmission organization. But I will say, from day one that I joined Dominion all the way to today, I've had incredible leaders, really good people who recognized for me anyways, the talents that I had earned while I was in the Marine Corps,
Sure.
how I applied them, and helped me transition from the military life to the civilian world. So they kind of rounded the edges, would be the best way that I could put it.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it allowed me to make an easy transition. And not to be, I don't want to stroke my own ego, but I was successful at that. I understood what was required of the job. I adapted to how things were to how they should be today. And I bent, I modified my behavior would be the best way to put it. And like I said, I had really good leaders who helped support me to do that, which was very helpful. And I think one of the great things about Dominion Energy is that we have this culture to support veterans. And we have the whole initiative right now. 1 out of every 5 that we hire is a veteran. It's an incredible program, and I love it. And I love being inside the company to help promote it and support it.
Well, and if I can interject real quick, one of the things I think is important for the listeners to have caught on to is you're talking about, the early 2000s. I think a lot of employees, and at least ones that I interact with, are associating our military program efforts and our commitment to veterans maybe within the past decade. But I know well, just because I get to live it every day, which I really enjoy, and many others do too. But there's still a large population of employees that don't realize that this has been a cultural thing and a commitment on behalf of the company going back 2 decades, 3, 4, 5, and really for our entire company's history. So I just wanted to point that out because you're talking about scholarships and internships and co-ops and veteran hiring 20 years ago,
right?
Which is good.
Great point. I mean, it's always been the culture of Dominion. It's just been more vocal.
Right.
The current chairman has been, empowered.
Yeah.
He's passionate about himself as well, Mr. Farrell. But I mean, that's absolutely true. I think that if you look around, the veterans are sprinkled throughout the company at all levels, from the entry-level employee to the vice presidents, some of the senior vice presidents in the company. They're either naval officers. I think of a couple. Dan Stoddard, I believe, is a naval officer.
Yeah.
Then we have myself. I'm at a director level. There's several other directors that I'm aware of that are veterans, managers. You have senior technical people from an engineer, technical consultants that they're out there in the world doing this great work, and nobody realizes it. We don't raise our hand. We don't pound our chest that much. But one of the good things, though, is that we have these ERGs, these employee resource groups throughout the company. And that was for me, joining the veterans group was a great experience for myself because it allowed me to become more involved with how the company, or at least a voice to help the company make informed decisions about how we treat veterans or how we retain them, because that's a big thing. Bringing all these veterans in is great, but how do we keep them in the company? How do we keep that knowledge base and that experience? And our human resources department has been very receptive to that. I mean, we have people throughout the HR organization that are passionate about this as well, and it's just been a good experience. I would say that I really enjoyed my time when I was on the ERG. Anybody listening to do so, join it and become involved.
Absolutely.
If they're frustrated about something, join, have your voice heard, help influence decisions for the company by joining these groups.
Absolutely. No, I'm really glad that you said that. And actually that's where you and I first met. I don't think we'd had a chance to meet until we both were working together through the Veterans Resource Group. But you're right, whether it's the Veterans Group or any of our other ERGs, it is well, one, the ERGs always do great things. It is a great way to implement your creative ideas. It's a great way to meet people across the business. And especially now that all of our ERGs are expanding chapters to different locations, it's just making our Dominion Energy world a little bit smaller, which is a very good thing in my opinion. But you're right. I want to point out a few things that are really, and these are unsolicited. We did not plan these prior to the call, but you mentioned a few words, and I'll paraphrase to some degree, but assimilating to culture, learning leadership early on, empathy, being promoted quickly, which will tie into the next part of what I'll ask you here. Enjoying learning, which is something that, sometimes that comes earlier or later for some folks, but I think that's also a really notable thing. And then just investments in the person. And you talked about that experience in the Marine Corps, but I'm hearing what you're saying is you're seeing a lot of these things or all of these things, even at Dominion Energy, which I think is really important, for the listeners to hear and to understand that there are all of these things happening throughout the company.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities out there, and I would say even within the last 5 years, I've seen a heavier influence of opportunities.
Sure.
And I see if I can articulate this the right way. As a leader, I would say that it's your responsibility to invest in yourself if you want to be promoted or find other opportunities. Nobody's going to just come knock on your door and say, hey, Matt, I found this great opportunity for you. You've
Right.
got to create that opportunity for yourself. And that means by investing yourself in technical training or even just personal improvement by, I'll use sensitivity as a good training, or blind spots for certain people. When you have your reviews with your managers and they say something to the effect of, oh, Jason, I notice you struggle with your email communication sometimes. Recognizing that constructive feedback, and then how do I improve that?
Sure.
So you go to the LinkedIn training,
Yeah.
you find this video and you're like, oh, the light bulb goes off in your head, like, oh, you're right. I do use explanation points and everything, or I send the message the wrong way, everything in caps. There's certain soft techniques that can improve your performance in anything. So
Right.
take the opportunities to find training for yourself. It makes you a better person, better employee. Your leaders, and maybe not even your own leader, but other leaders will recognize that. Your peers will recognize that. And people who look up to you will recognize that and come to you. So then you establish yourself as a leader within your organization. That's when you're recognized. I'll use a terrible analogy because I love basketball.
Okay.
You have 5 people on a team and you're all working really hard, and the ball is shot up and it hits the backboard and get a bad bounce off the rim. If you know how to box out, you've done that your entire career and you use technique and you've set yourself up for success, the ball could land right in your hands. But if you don't learn how to, box out or do all the fundamentals,
Sure.
The ball could land there, but it could be taken away from you because someone else did a better job. Or, somebody did follow, it's a terrible analogy, but that's how I use it for my son all the time. You have to set yourself up for success. Follow the fundamentals.
Well, you reminded me. So you know me. Not all of the listeners will have ever had the chance to see or meet me, but for anyone who does know me, I am not a basketball player. I am short, stocky, and complete opposite of basketball. But I did play baseball growing up, and my coaches were great. I had great leadership in sports as well. But one of the things that my coaches used to tell me is luck is timing and preparation coming together. And so I think that's similar to what you're saying is you make your own outcomes, and you have to be open to listening to the leaders, and you have to be comfortable in receiving some of that feedback. Let me I guess move over a little bit to just your leadership experiences. So how would you say that your military background and the things that you just, you mentioned a moment ago, how did those things influence you? And I think you've alluded to it a little bit, but how did they influence you in your career growth, or how do those things compare to what you've experienced in your own leadership development within the company?
Well, I guess I'm going to refer to an acronym that was very familiar in the Marine Corps in my age. So I'm going to show my age. I don't even know if they use this acronym anymore, but they call it the 11 leadership traits. Did you ever hear that?
Yep.
JJ did tie buckle.
Yeah. Yep.
So you've got they've got all these acronyms, and then they stand for words: justice, decisiveness, integrity, dependability, tact. I could name them all.
Yeah.
But that foundation that they taught me through, day 1 or day 2 through boot camp, they make you memorize that for the rest of your life. And you grow up understanding that it's a balance of all of these traits. You need to be, I call it a jack of all trades. It's the wrong word, but you have to be able to use all of them at the right time. You can't be strong in just one trait because then you're unbalanced. And I use judgment as initiative. Here's a good idea. Somebody who takes the initiative all the time without having, sound judgment. They're just out there they're in the front end, making mistakes all the time. They don't learn from it just because they want to get everything done fast. That's a terrible, terrible trait if not used properly. But if you use sound judgment and you use knowledge and you combine the three, when you get to a point and you realize, I'm not getting the answer I want, I'm going to take the initiative and do something. Like I want there to be these rocks painted gold, but nobody ever wants to do it. Well, I'm going to go buy the paint and I'll paint the rocks gold. You get the job done, but you use sound judgment. You don't go spend $1,000 on gold and then paint the rocks gold. You said, I'm using again, another terrible analogy, but the point is you have to take all of these leadership traits and you have to find the right balance and use them at the right time. And I think the Marine Corps taught me that. And that helped me when I joined Dominion Energy in the civilian world, of understanding tactfulness. Yeah. Understanding that bearing and how you hold yourself makes an impression. Taking integrity. You always have to have your integrity. Using sound judgment. And the good thing is Dominion has a culture where they enable you as an employee to make decisions. Right. And if you can make mistakes and you learn from them. Your leadership gives you just enough. I'll call it, they give you enough, I want to use the right acronym here, they give you enough space to make these mistakes and then learn from them so that you become better. So I guess, go ahead.
I was just to say, and do you, the emerging leaders, the developing Dominion
there's so
leaders,
many opportunities out there.
And you see a lot of those same traits woven into that development programs.
Well, again, for me, I've been very fortunate that I've had great leaders, and I've also did a lot of my own internal reflection of what do I need to become better at. So I went to get my engineering degree, and I realized that if I want to get far ahead in my career, I need to get my PE. So I studied and did that, my professional engineering license. I didn't, when it came time to get my master's, did I want to get an MBA or did I want to get some other degree? Do I want to go in a science degree? I decided I want to do engineering management, kind of more of a passion for myself. It's kind of project management with engineering mixed together. So I found these things that I'm passionate about that also help teach me things that, again, when I got to my career, I could apply them at my job. Right. And so when I did that, my leaders and my peers recognized what I was doing. So when the opportunities came along, they said, Jason, would you like to do this? And absolutely, I would jump at those opportunities. I take advantage of them. And I would say I will continue to do so for my next 15 years. I mean, I've still got another 15 years with the company or maybe even another 20. I'm going to take advantage of every opportunity that comes along. And I would recommend that anybody in any position do the same thing. Yeah. And there's so many out there. You have tuition assistants. You've got the developing the Dominion leader. You've got emerging leaders. You've got all of these LinkedIn classes. Yeah. And LinkedIn, it is an incredible opportunity.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I've used it like 5 or 6 times, and it's how to think strategically, something I've probably always struggled with in my life. It took me an hour to go through the course, and I learned a lot of interesting things.
Well, and I think, and I really appreciate a lot of what you're sharing, especially as you're able to help, and it's along the lines and the theme of the intent of the podcast, but you're sharing a lot of nuggets from your military experience, how they have translated to your experience with Dominion Energy or just, in the civilian sector in general for others who've had other experiences. And the learning never stops. So I think you've also alluded to or mentioned, peer-to-peer learning. You did say that you get a lot of direction from your leadership that you've had within the company, but I think I'm hearing, and maybe I'm making this up, but I think I'm hearing too that you're learning from others around you, and it could be other leaders. So, for example, you might see a trait that one of your peers right now has on the offshore wind side, and that's something that you maybe are mentally cataloging and saying, you know what, I'd like to improve on that myself, and you might befriend that individual and learn from them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's just it's a good example for anyone. And I think that the higher you get promoted in any field, either in the military, in the civilian world, the Dominion Energy, I like to say the higher I get promoted, the less I know about everything else that's going on. And the reason why I say that is because I'm responsible for more than I can comprehend sometimes. And I have to rely on the subject matter experts that work for me, they're on my team, have the trust and the faith that they know what they're doing, and empower them to make good decisions, and for them to be the ones that I can go to and ask questions. And especially, I'll use an example. If I'm an electrical engineer, one of my jobs in my past life was as a manager of project managers for facilities. And that was everything from renovating, or adding a chiller to a building, to renovating floors, to building brand new buildings.
Okay.
I don't know anything about interior architecture at all. But there are certain people within my group who are extremely knowledgeable about it, or knowledgeable about LEED engineering, which is leadership in environmental. It's a standard for green buildings, basically.
Sure.
And there's experts within the company that know everything about it that I only know maybe 5% of. So I rely on them to, be knowledgeable and give their expertise to the project, so it makes us as a team better. So I do not know everything, nor will I ever know everything. And I am constantly asking stupid questions. Always, every time I go in, especially starting this new role in the wind side. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm coming over and trying to help out the Generation Construction Group, and I'm coming in as the work is gone. And I'm always stopping people in the meeting. I've got to ask a stupid question. What does this acronym mean? Who are these people? Because I don't know. And if I don't ask the questions, I'm not going to ever figure it out. So,
yeah. Well, and two things again that I just want to highlight. Again, just a second ago, you were talking about relying on your team, and as you were saying that, I know that is extremely applicable to our energy industry and to all that Dominion Energy does. But you just reminded me that even at the earliest points in a military person's career, no matter how long that career may be, 4 to 20 plus years, you're learning these leadership traits early on. And you said as much at the beginning. And I think that is also an important lesson for any Dominion Energy employee, not just veteran employees, to also recognize is that what you're doing, even if you're in a entry level or associate level individual contributor role, you can still be a leader, whether it's through your actions, through how you're learning, you're helping others. And then the stupid questions. Obviously, I know there's no such thing as a stupid question, but some sound sillier than others. But you mentioned acronyms. That is something else that, of course, transitioning service members and even other veterans are always challenged with. And I would even argue that the civilian employers that don't have a military background are also equally challenged, because we have this language barrier, from the military to the civilian side. And the point being is, it is okay at any level, at any time, to ask the right or to ask any questions, right, so that you can ensure that you have an understanding. Are there any? We have a few more minutes before we wrap up, but are there any things that just maybe words of advice, or just one or two things that you might leave listeners with as it pertains to leadership in general, or maybe the value of a military person and the leadership traits that they likely bring?
Well, that was a broad question. So,
yeah.
So advice I think what I will do is I'll try to give advice to someone who's probably coming out of the military culture to the civilian. And what I'll say is for them to be patient, because the transition is not easy all the time. It's having patience, and also being willing to learn, and asking a lot of questions. And then, like I said, never stop learning. We've talked about this the whole thing, about anything. Learning how to work with a different type of team. Having maybe good examples. Maybe you come on to this, you join this team, and none of them do things the way you would do it back in the Marine Corps.
Right.
So go talk to them and say, well, this is what I'm used to. Why? Go talk to them. Understand their perspective. That's the challenge. Maybe you don't understand, just like they don't understand why you're so motivated, and you want to, you come into the room, you're ready to go at 5:00, and like, oh my God, Jason, wish he'd calm down,
Right.
But so it's coming together and understanding both perspectives, and you come up with this compromise, and then you move forward. That's about anything, from negotiating contracts to having a performance appraisal, both you with an employee or you're having a performance appraisal with your boss and you don't agree about something. You come to the table, explain each other's perspectives, and come to an understanding, and then move forward. I think that's about just life in general.
Sure.
It's good advice. But for those coming out of the military into the civilian world, that's especially challenging because it is such a drastic change because a lot of people in the civilian world don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's just education. If they did understand, then it would be a smooth transition. So part of that challenge is you have to educate your peers. You have to educate your leaders on why things maybe you're just not. That's the wrong word. Not fitting in is not the right word, but maybe there's challenges in what we can do to try to fix it.
Yeah.
Part of that is, I will say, I listened to your two first podcasts, and I really enjoyed the one with Psych Armor, Colonel Cooper. Anything from this, and both the Dominion employees, leaders, and veterans coming into the company, go to the Psych Armor website and watch their 15 things that veterans want you to know.
Right.
Incredible video, great perspective, puts it in context and articulates it much better than I ever could.
Me too.
So I would recommend that.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you. Yeah, your advice is extremely meaningful, and I think you are. I mean, honestly, you're probably one of the most perfect examples of what going from the military, getting your education, taking advantage of an internship co-op type experience, earning a veteran scholarship, which we offer, and then coming on full time and then growing the way you have over the past, 15, 20 years. So, I mean, this could not have been a more perfect example of our first veteran employee highlight or spotlight on this show. So one thing I think you mentioned, you listened to the first two episodes. One of the things I try to do at the end of each episode is a section that we're calling At Ease, which I know you can appreciate.
It's great.
So you and I were able to chat a little bit before this, obviously in preparation. So we're going to go with a little bit of a different question. I'd asked our previous guests about, morning beverages, and, I need to mix it up a little bit. So we're going to go with nicknames. So what, tell us if you had a nickname in the military or growing up, what was a nickname that stuck with you?
I did. So when I was in the Marine Corps, my last name is German and it's pronounced Meidinger. Okay. So you say it fast, Meidinger.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get in the Marine Corps, I got on the shooting team after a couple years, and I'm really one of the better shooters, so I'm shooting really, really well. And they started calling me Dinger.
Okay.
The last, the last part of and I never understood why until I talked to this old gunny. I said, I get why they do that. But he said, did you know that from an old term back in like the 1900s, when they, back in World War I and the Korean War, et cetera, that a dinger was basically the term for a marksman, first like a sharpshooter. So it was just ironic. The irony of it was that my last name was Meidinger. They would call me Dinger, and it just stuck through. They never called me Meidinger my entire time throughout the career. It was always Dinger. Sergeant Dinger. Where's Staff Sergeant Dinger? And no one else I knew had that name, so it's
right.
So.
Well, it seems that in your given name, it was meant to be.
It was just the irony.
Yeah.
Fate.
Well, when you told me that before, I was thinking there was going to be some kind of cool softball story about home run hitting, but
no.
Well, I'm not going to belabor my nickname story, but mine was I did have some in the military, which probably aren't appropriate to share, but mine was Cookie. And honestly, it just came because again, if you all see me, I'm not tall and I'm very stocky build, and I love cookies, and just, I could go on and on. But so anyway, that got abbreviated to Cook, and all my buddies who I still see now from high school are like, hey, what's up, Cook? So we've got the Dinger and Cookie.
The military is crazy,
Yeah. I will just close with this, and then we'll give you a chance to tell folks how they can communicate with you, and then we'll close things up. But yes, when I first showed up to Parris Island, I went to boot camp on the East Coast. When I showed up to Parris Island, I quickly learned how entertaining I thought drill instructors were, and I've come to learn that all branches, drill sergeants or training instructors are all the same. They are hilarious. But one of the things that they love to do, and it carries on throughout your military career, is they love to purposely butcher a name. So anyway, nicknames I think are pretty fitting, and I think we all ended up with one or many more of them. Well, with that, Jason, obviously our listeners are Dominion Energy employees and leaders. So what would be the best way, if you're open to it, for folks to connect with you should they have questions or want to reach out to you?
I mean, the easiest way is by email. I am the only Meidinger in the directory. So if you type MEI, my name will pop up. But
Okay.
I mean, I am personally very passionate about making sure that not just our veterans, but all employees are successful.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to help with career development in the sense of, like, one of the big things is just people writing resumes,
Sure.
I'll look at a resume and I'll help you. I'll try to set up so that it gets through the first stages. I'm really good at that. And so I'm happy to help out. So reach out. Email is the best way to do it. And I will respond as soon as possible.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thanks so much. And I will close by saying thank you for
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show, and thanks for things that you have taught me, whether you know it or not, over the past few years. I really appreciate it, and I do look to you and many of our other veteran leaders with very high regard. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out the show, and thanks for being on with us, Jason.
All right, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
That's all we have for today's episode. We'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the conversation. For more information about the company's military program, visit dominionenergy.com/military or search military program on the company's HR home site. To provide feedback for the show or to send us your questions, email militaryrelations@dominionenergy.com. A special thanks to Dennis McDade, Air Force veteran employee, for our theme music. Join us for our next episode when we have Lori Adams, Veterans Policy Director with the National Association of State Workforce Agencies, and where we talk about her responsibilities in that role, the National Labor Exchange, what are levers and DVOPs and what's the difference, and what are American Job Centers and the services that they offer. Thank you for listening, and remember, actions speak louder.
I'll hold your hands and you hold mine. Connect and walk ourselves up to the top. Support and power develop till we can rise above exploitation and pain.
Welcome to General Understanding, a conversation for betterment for all employees to learn more about veterans, a platform for unity, embracing communities, perfect opportunity to value you and me, those who serve their country and fought for our rights, to the family and friends of those who sacrifice. This is dedicated to all, and by the way, I salute our armed forces every day as your holiday.